guys, AdamHarry here with a quick BoLS overview. I got Stable Abe here.
Hi.
And we're going to go through the Deathwatch core book from Thanks for Games. Again, Abe and I have talked about this quite a bit. This book's really cool. Abe, what are some things you like about this book straight off the bat?
I really like this book because it's got amazing quality, artwork, and fluff. It's a really great resource. And if you want to use it as it's intended to play the role-playing game,
right?
It's just a different feel from the other role-playing games. You get to play the Deathwatch, the best of the best. You get to go in there and just single-handedly take apart armies or leaders and change the course of
a whole galaxy, a whole sector.
Yeah.
There. One of the things I really like about this game, again, it's part of the Dark Heresy series from FFG. So if you play Dark Heresy, Rogue Trader, what was the guard ones? The guards.
Only War.
Only War. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you played any of those, you're familiar with the game already. But this is the one where you get to play as a Marine Deathwatch. So pretty stoked about this book. We're going to dive right in. We are going to focus more so on the Deathwatch specific stuff. So if you're looking for a review of core mechanics, stats and traits, or how to build your character, it's not really what we're going for in this review. We want to focus on what makes Deathwatch so cool. So with that said, let's jump on in. All right, so we've got the Deathwatch core rulebook. Again, it's the FFG role-playing. It's part of the, we talk about the Dark Heresy and all that stuff.
Right.
Really cool book. We'll flip over the back real quick. Just wanted to touch base on that real quick. What I loved about this book, again, we mentioned this earlier, was the fact that you get to play as a Marine, right? And not just any Marine, but you're playing as the special ops of the special ops of the Imperium, right? So Deathwatch, really cool stuff. This is obviously a really big book. I mean, we're talking like 500 pages, something like that, crazy. 400 pages at least. But we're not going to touch on all those things. We just want to kind of focus on what was cool about the Deathwatch.
Right. And
kind of why we brought this book out in the first place, which was to show off some of the cool stuff, some of the cool background of the Deathwatch. So we'll skip over sections like how to play the game and like the armory and stuff like that. You know what Marines are packing.
Yeah, I mean, the game is very similar to, obviously, to all the other Dark Heresy, Only War, those games. Can you just give us like a couple of the key differences that you know?
You're playing a Marine. Right. You don't have an Inquisitor directly. You can have an Inquisitor giving you the orders, but you don't have to in this one. Versus like Dark Heresy, where you're basically the henchman of an Inquisitor. This game, you're not exactly, because the way that we'll get into this a little bit later. The way the organization is set up, the Deathwatch are partners with the Inquisition, not direct reports to the Inquisition. Right. And that's a distinction a lot of people don't really remember. It's always like, oh, it's an Inquisitor, they can do whatever they want. It's like, most of the time. But the Deathwatch is an organization that was set up by all the different chapter masters that were like, okay, there is this external Xenos threat that we know about, that we need some kind of rapid response that can partner with you. We'll create this Deathwatch organization, and we'll get into all that.
Right.
But
to me, in a lot of ways, this is a very similar book to like the Only War book. They're both building on the core Dark Heresy thing. And I think one of the cool things that they have, like just like Only War has the, if you're familiar with that book, it has the create your own regiment rules.
Right, that's for the guardsmen,
That's for the guardsmen.
Yeah. That was a fun one,
Yeah, so this one kind of has create your own chapter, or pick your chapter stuff.
Right.
So it's kind of similar in that way, where you're less tethered to the Inquisitor telling you.
Exactly. And the Rogue Trader version, I like to think of that one more as like a Star Trek away team adventure.
Sure, yeah.
Which I've heard it described like that before, and it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
This is going to be a lot more. If you're more of a hack and slash role player, this is perfect for you, because the game master can literally create a scenario where you are drop podding in on an orc kill cruiser, and your job is to kill the war boss on the kill cruiser. What? Yeah, your Marines go to town.
Like, I mean, I think of that's interesting. Yeah, like Rogue Trader is kind of your Star Trek away team. Only War to me is very like Saving Private Ryan, Enemy Brigades. And then this is, I mean, what would you say? What movie would you say this sums up?
Oh, man. God, that's a good question. The Terminator? Except there's multiple Terminators?
Yeah.
And you are the Terminator? Because there's actually rules in here, we won't get into all the rules, but there's rules for fighting hordes and waves of guys.
Right.
So, like, you can have your squad of 5 Deathwatch guys break waves.
Break waves, yeah.
So we'll get into all that. We'll skip over a lot of it, but we'll get into some of it. Basically, real quick, too, want to run through this. This is, of course, the contents. Chapter creation, we talked about that. You do pick a chapter. You can pick some of the big name ones. Ultramarines, Blood Angels. You've got Dark Angels, Space Wolves, and there's some modification through that. The Imperial Fist through the Black Templar are an option. There's some other stuff like that, and then also generic. If you wanted to do kind of a generic chapter,
sure.
you probably go Ultramarines based, but you can pick your doctor. You'd have to work with your game master.
Right.
Talking about the specialties and stuff like that, the Deathwatch does have all your typical Marine functions. So Devastators, Assault Marines, Attack Marines. They also have their own apothecaries, which is kind of a big deal in this game because you will get hurt, and having apothecary is good. But they are not combat. They're not just your heal bots. I want to make that very clear. If you're playing an apothecary, you are first and foremost a Marine and not a heal bot. So you're not going to be sitting there healing. You're going to be shooting your bolts, or you're going to be kicking butt too. Librarians, which psychic powers, if you've played Dark Heresy, scary stuff. Scary stuff for everybody. And then they also, interestingly enough, have a Tech Marine, which I thought is pretty cool. So lots of stuff there. We'll probably skip over the armory because you probably know. We'll talk about some of the special weapons, but there's also the skills and the talents, which was more core gameplay. Psychic powers, again, scary times for everybody involved. How to play the game, and then the combat structure. We'll probably skip over most of those sections just because...
If you've played the other games, it's very similar rule base. It's all D100 base.
Yeah, absolutely. You roll. You want to shoot. You want to shoot under your stats. So if your stats are 90, you're pretty hot. But also you want to roll under a 90 on the D100. So. Skip to the Game Master stuff. We won't go over the scenario either, but we will focus heavily on this chapter 11, which is the Deathwatch. Talks about the origins of the Deathwatch and stuff like that.
And then we've also got a nice chapter 10. It's a big overview of the whole Imperium.
Yeah, we'll skim through that one for sure. But let's go ahead and just jump in here. One of the things I do want to mention about this book: lots of awesome artwork, lots of these pages that are kind of ripped right from the fluff style stuff.
I mean, I always say with any of the Fantasy Flight games, especially I think with their 40K games, they're worth buying if you are a fan of 40K, of the setting and stuff, because the quality is amazing, the artwork is amazing, the fluff is amazing. They're just great if you're a fan.
Yeah. So even if you're not playing Deathwatch, it's fun to flip through, man. You have a buddy that wants to get into 40K and they're not really sure, just hand him the Deathwatch book and watch him go, okay. So we'll talk about this. Just again, it is this system, if you're familiar, again, 2D10 or a D100 system, however you want to call it. But you're rolling those. You got a 10s and a 1s spot there. Talks about the origin of the Space Marines. A lot of this art, like you mentioned, there is some custom art from FFG. A lot of the stuff is from GW. Obviously, they partnered, so.
But it's always the best hits.
Right. Good top quality, top shelf stuff here. It talks about all the foundings and stuff like that. We're not going to focus too heavily on the Space Marine origins because we all know where they came from, all the chapters, stuff like that. So, but it does go through that. If you have no idea about it, this is a perfect way to jump into all the Space Marines. They do talk about all of the different glands and augmentations to get. I love that. There was that White Dwarf series way back when, where they talk about the Black Carapace and all that stuff. Really cool stuff. Path of the Space Marine. Well, character creation, we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's you pick your chapter is going to determine a lot of your core, let's say, philosophy. And then it'll determine your weapon skill and stuff like that. Different chapters have slightly different bonuses, but...
And that's one of the cool things to think about Deathwatch is that you get people from multiple different chapters, players from all these different chapters with all these different specialties or philosophies playing in, unlike some of the other games where you might play, everyone might be from the same regiment or something.
You get a good mix.
You get a really good mix, So.
It's a fun way to create some of that group drama, especially if you have a Dark Angel and a Space Wolf. There should be some group drama there, but at the same time, it's not overpowering. You guys are on a specific mission to do a specific task. You're not hanging out, in the town for 4 hours buying gear. You're on the strike cruiser going to kill some stuff.
And I think that's a good point too. this is a great game for doing one-off missions.
Absolutely.
Or 1 or 2 missions where you can just drop in, like you said, you're on the kill cruiser. You don't need a big background.
No.
You don't need a big mission briefing.
Why are the orcs coming?
Yeah.
They're orcs.
They're orcs. Why are we killing them? You're Deathwatch. They're going to kill stuff. Do it first. Yeah.
Again, hack and slash gameplay. This is a lot of fun for that. They do have some rules for coming up with your character. Again, I like these charts they have in here. We'll just read through the Blood Angels one real quick. So these are a 1 to 5 chart. It talks about your past experiences. For instance, this one talks about the Scourging of Ultramar. This one is the Assault on Vale, A New Beginning, Golgotha Strike Force, Purge the Space Hulk. So that's where your Marine came from before they joined the Deathwatch.
And if you're not familiar with the Fantasy Flight 40K role-playing games, it's tables. Tables and tables and tables, and they are hilarious.
Critical hit tables.
They can be hilarious tables, but there are more tables in these games than any other game I know.
Yeah, I think if you want to randomly generate pretty much whatever you want, there's a table for that.
Yeah. But it's also key that you don't have to be too tied to the tables.
Right. But one of the things too they do introduce is the Storm Wardens as a chapter. We forgot to mention that earlier. They play a big role as kind of an army that's in this book quite a bit.
Right.
The chapter that you can pick from. The demeanors, again, this is kind of more role-playing stuff. We won't probably get into this too much, but it's a source for how you kind of play your Marine. Right. And you get actually role-playing effects, bonuses, in-game combat bonuses for role-playing a character like that. The name chart. Again, you mentioned charts.
Yeah.
If you want to randomly generate your character, there's a chart for that. So for names, I love the different names. You kind of get a feel per chapter, kind of like where those names kind of originate from.
Right.
So like the Black Templar, they have names like Wilhelm, Sigmason, Alexander, Gervhard. Those are kind of Germanic sounding.
Very Germanic, yeah.
Then we've got the Dark Angels are more, I would say, biblical sounding in a way. Naman, Belthor, it's just more Halibos. It's more maybe Greek in a way.
Almost more Hebrewish.
Hebrewish, thank you.
Kind of biblical Hebrew, yeah.
Blood Angels, Raphian, Archeo, Leonotos. You've got names that are like more Italianish.
But
classic Italian standing, Space Wolves.
And Greek too.
Greek, Latin. That's what I was going for. Yeah. Latin style. Same with Ultramarines. Those are definitely
they're the real Latin ones.
Right, that's the serious Latin. Yeah. There's no Italian. It's just straight up. Space Wolves. You got Viking names.
Yep.
You got Logan, Ivar, Skiffle, stuff like that. So, Storm Wardens. They're kind of an interesting mix. You've got Morgan, and then Lorgrath. So. Yeah, anyway, it's a cool chart. If you're looking for ideas for like naming Marines for your
always
game,
good,
always fun if you want a little backstory. So, just on your tabletop stuff. Role-playing as a Marine, you're a Marine. You do have a different demeanor and stuff like that you should apply. And then each chapter has certain things. That's what's cool about the Deathwatch, right?
Right.
Like, all of these chapters send their Marines, and they all train together, learn together, live together for a bit, and then go out and do crazy battles they might not come back from.
Insane stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I still remember. I think one of the last Chancer books where there's like that one Deathwatch Marine in it.
Bingo.
Who just takes out like the entire Tau base by himself.
Yeah.
And that's what this book is about.
That's exactly
it's
what
being
this
that
book
kind
is.
of guy.
You are that guy
who's got rail guns bouncing off his armor, taking chunks out of it, just ruining everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, it's just you're playing that guy. You're playing movie Marines, to the nth degree because you're Deathwatch. And then you've got Templars, Blood Angels. And then it's cool because they have backgrounds for those chapters, and then also like why they are a part of that Deathwatch. Mm-hmm. Dark Angels. We'll kind of skip ahead. There's Space Wolves. Again, the Lion and the Wolf. They mentioned that whole thing.
Right. That's
kind of a big deal. The Storm Wardens. Again, more of a generic chapter, but you could base other stuff like if you wanted to create your own chapter.
Yeah.
It's kind of the template for that. So, and then of course the Ultramarines. You got to have the poster boys. So. We'll get through the specialties. Let's go ahead and skip it around a little bit. Those are just game ranks and stuff like that. I wanted to. It's all rules. Again, charts.
It's all charts. It's all rules, and it's going to be
advancements, rank.
It's
up.
going to be your what we kind of covered. Your stereotypical
Yeah.
tactical marine, assault marine, tech marine.
Yeah, and this is where we get into the actual
Yeah.
classes, if you want to call them that. So there's your apothecary, rules for doing all that. Assault marines. The assault marines are really good actually because they have cool. The way you get war gear in game is based on requisition points, and so that helps a big factor. Like, you know, you can eventually get like Terminator armor, but you're not going to start the game requisitioning Terminator armor.
Right.
You gotta work your way up there. So each marine, based on your class, you start with a certain amount. My personal favorite, I love the attack marine.
Yeah.
You just all around awesomeness.
I mean, I know that one of the things about 40K roleplay in general is that bolters are incredibly powerful.
Oh.
And most of the time when you're playing Dark Heresy or Only War, your GM's going to limit how many bolters you can have because they are crazy. So
when you have 5 in a party,
and then they're all specialized, artificer bolters and stuff, mastercrafted. Yeah, I mean,
they have
just a bolter.
They have a switcher too for the clip, the ammo, the actual clip. You can have, I think it's 30 rounds. And you can have a switcher between 3 different types of ammo.
Nice.
So you can have your Kraken rounds and your Hellfire rounds and all that, and like plain old bolter rounds in there, and you can switch between them. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Skills. We'll go ahead and skip through all this because this is again more gameplay stuff for Deathwatch, where I wanted to focus more on Deathwatch as well. So talents and stuff like that, the armory. We'll skip through this. This has got some fun stuff in here in the armory. Again, the requisition points. Special issue war gear, we talked about that a little bit.
Most of this is stuff that shows up in the others.
Yeah, and again, it's a wide variety. That's one of the cool things about the Deathwatch is they have access to pretty much anything. Literally any weapon in the Imperium, they probably have access to, and they probably have some access to some weapons that may not be.
So I mean, just quickly, you can see you've got all your different types of bolt weapons. Your plasma weapons, your melt weapons, and these are going to be better than just your normal bolt.
Yeah, they're the Astartes bolters, so they're even better than a bolter, which
shotgun,
is
assault cannon, las cannon. You can have a las gun or a las pistol if you want, though.
Yeah, that's true. They're reliable.
I think it'd be pretty funny to play a whole unit of Deathwatch just armed with las pistols.
I know. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Give me the auxiliary grenade launcher.
and like Power Fist or something.
Right, for sure. All of the different. You can have combi weapons, obviously. All the different bolters. We talked. We mentioned all that. All the different. There's all Space Marine weapons too. Yeah. This book actually came out before there were grav weapons. So there's no grav weapon rules in here, if you were wondering. But Deathwatch would probably have access to some of that too. So they have plasma weapons. So.
They do obviously have the conversion beamer though.
Yes.
That was another weapon, and you've got digital weapons and sniper rifles and all those cool things.
Oh yeah. The close combat weapons are always fun too.
Yeah.
Because Deathwatch could have pretty much whatever.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, power weapons are very common. You could take chain swords.
Yeah.
But when you can take a power sword, it's kind of, I don't know. All that stuff, the red dot sights makes them awesome. They do have a really cool section about the armor of the Space Marine. I want to touch on that real quick. Power armor, obviously, talks about all the different upgrades that power armor provides. It even has this picture that has all the auto senses and stuff, all the technology built into the helmets.
That's probably, I would say, one of the biggest equipment changes you're going to have between Deathwatch and the other games is how much more of a role your armor plays. Because if you're playing Dark Heresy, power armor is just
better.
It's just but it's just a stat. It's just armor. It doesn't give you all the bajillion abilities that this gives you. And
this one, speaking of those, you've got stuff like enhanced strength, just plus 20 strength, just whatever. Ceramite plating, your armor gives you 10 AP armor points to your body and 8 to all other locations, including your head. You've got biomonitor injectors. You take damage, you can have a bonus to pass poison tests and pain suppression and all this other stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, magnetic boots, and you get a history. Every piece of power armor gets a history, so you need to roll on the chart.
Yep,
of course.
Gotta have a chart,
and that's gonna give you a background on what your power armor came from,
which is always fun.
Which is great, yeah.
My armor is actually from. Let's see. I have the Terror Be Thy Friend. All my suits of power armor are intimidating, and this one causes fear. So, and if you've played Dark Heresy, you know that fear is very scary. Like as a trait to fight something that causes fear is bad news. So Yeah, your power armor can cause fear.
Yeah.
That's Deathwatch right there, baby. We got all the different other armor. We'll skip ahead here too. We got a good idea. You've got specific Deathwatch relics you can get too, which is even more cool stuff. Jump packs, the different tools, all that stuff. Cybernetics. Obviously, Deathwatch can have access to the top of the line stuff.
Right.
Psychic powers. It's all bad news.
Probably for you too.
Yeah, it's good stuff, but it can be,
Yeah.
it can always destroy stuff too. Psychic powers. The Marines are better, I will say.
Sure.
Having a Deathwatch Marine in the game cast psychic powers is much better than having a Guardsman Psyker. Holy crap.
Yeah.
And then the other cool thing is you actually get psychic powers based on the chapter too, which was kind of cool. So some of these, when this came out, these were actual psychic powers in game. So like Wings of Sanguinius, Blood Boil. I remember those powers being in the book, and they've since changed a couple of things around. So, but they're all there. Playing the game, we're not going to get into that. That's core role mechanics. I don't want to touch on that. Combat, it's the same stuff from Dark Heresy.
Right.
So we're good to go there. I don't want to spend too much time. And then the Game Master section. This is more of like how to play the game, or how to get your guys, how to do the rewards and all that stuff, how to get your players engaged. So we don't need to spend too much time. More awesome maps.
Yeah.
I love the map. There's a lot of glare coming, but you can see the Eye of Terror. It's over here, Cadia. These are all the places that you're going to be fighting.
Yep.
Strike cruisers going from Terra to the ends of the universe, or the galaxy there, They have High Fleet Behemoth coming in, so they have the Tyranids are a big thing. Again, Deathwatch. Yep. Xenos organization, anti-Xenos. So talks about the Age of Humanity, which is a big deal. So this is again getting into. Sorry, I skipped over that. This is getting into the Imperium of Man. So this is more background about the Imperium, and again starts touching on where the Deathwatch actually comes from,
but not quite there yet.
We're not quite there yet, right? So different types of high worlds. And you need to, if you've never played the game before, this is all very important background. And if you have played the game, it's a good refresher.
Absolutely.
So skipping ahead, I want to get to the Deathwatch section. So here we go. This is the part I was trying to get to the whole time, which is the origins of the Deathwatch. So this whole part goes into where exactly the Deathwatch came from, the chapter masters, how they met up and established this little conclave. and talked about with the Inquisitor Lords how they're going to work together and combat these Xenos threats, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's right here. Conclave of Inquisitor Lords, the Apocryphon Conclave of Orifite 4, convene with the sole purpose of formulating an Imperium-wide strategy to combat the many Xenos threats. So again, it's all these Inquisitors.
To fight the Xenos. Yeah.
Right, they get together at this conclave, they're like, yo, we got this problem. How are we gonna solve this? We need to get those Marines. We need to make them bow to us. To help out with that.
Yeah.
And so they kind of went back and forth. Some of the Inquisitors were like, yeah, that's not gonna work. those chapter masters are not. They won't do that. But eventually, the chapter masters of all the different Marines, not all of it. It's an unknown amount.
I love how typical 40K this is too. They sat around talking for several years because that's the scale this is on.
Yes.
And then some number of chapter masters. We have no idea how many. No one bothered recording anything. It's the entire meeting.
Yeah, for years.
Yeah, because we can't let people know what we're talking about.
Right, exactly. But they get there and they listen to the Inquisitors, and this is the part I love. And then they withdrew to consider the matter. Yeah. So the chapter masters are like, yeah, that's a good point. We'll be back. So they leave, and the chapter masters have their own deliberations, and taking into account all the stuff the Inquisitors were telling them, and that's where the Space Marine chapters actually came up with this Deathwatch. And so that's where they come, and that's why the Marines send. I wouldn't say it's a tithe, but they send support to the different Deathwatch outposts, and they send manpower, supplies. I don't know if I want to say they're required to, but they take that very seriously.
Right.
It's kind of a big deal to go to the Deathwatch because again, there's different watch captains and watch commanders, and there's actually, they talk about this a little bit. There's actually Black Shields, which are Deathwatch members that have no chapter to go back to.
Right.
So they're just there for life.
Yeah.
Some of the Marines get sent to the Deathwatch as penance, so they have a short, 5, 10, 100 years, whatever. It's a Marine. Sentenced to work for the Deathwatch. Some of them voluntarily leave for whatever reasons. So it's kind of a weird mix of like.
It's very similar. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, it's very similar to the Night's Watch.
Absolutely.
Especially because they're both organizations that their job is to watch outside. It's to guard against the alien and the invader and that kind of thing.
Exactly, and that's another thing. That's another key call. It is like these guys, while they have the numbers to be a chapter in essence, or a legion almost, they don't deal with everyday politics.
Right.
They respond to those galactic threats that this Xenos army is getting too powerful. We need a surgical strike. We don't need a full-blown campaign. So that's what's cool and crazy about these guys is they literally like 5-10-man squads go out, have one mission, do some crazy mission. I mean, you've read some of the novels, Euro Ventress stuff, where he's like fighting a Necron Lord and to keep her,
One of the things I like about Deathwatch is that in a lot of the 40K role-playing games, they're a ton of fun, but it's very hard to get a feeling like you're accomplishing anything on a grand scale.
Right.
You're a squad of the Imperial Guard.
Yeah, you took that hill.
Yeah, you took that hill. Maybe you saved that planet. You're an Inquisitor's henchman. Again, maybe you saved that planet.
You stopped that plot.
You stopped that one plot, that kind of thing. These guys I stopped the Hive Fleet.
What have you done on Tuesday?
I killed the war boss and ended that WOG. All the big stuff. Kind of thing.
These are like the epic, awesome adventures. It's fun times.
Yeah.
They talk about the recruitment again. I touched on this a little bit, but it's a mix of like people that are selected to serve, some volunteer, some are in essence sentenced there. So it's just a wide mix of recruitment, and they recruit from all the chapters. And stuff like that. And there's basically the recruit gets sent to a watch station, which is under the command of a watch captain or watch commander, and then they may stay there or they may get sent to a watch fortress and stuff like that. And those are just the rallying points.
This is one of the interesting pieces of fluff I think in the book too. Basically, this is saying that even though they take from all these chapters, if you're a Blood Angel or a Space Wolf, if you're one of the chapters that has one of those anomalies where you might go give into the Black Thirst or Black Rage, Red Thirst.
Black Rage,
yeah. Black Rage.
Or Grow Fangs.
Or Grow Fangs. You won't get sent. They're only going to send the pure-blooded, in essence, to fight in that. So that's kind of another taking out some of that politics you might find in this generic thing.
Yeah. Because it really is like, you still have your chapter markings and you still represent your chapter, but you are a Deathwatch member. These are battle brothers. These are men that you're going to be fighting and trusting your lives with. On a regular basis until you die. In essence. So, it's pretty cool stuff. They do mention the training. Again, with all those different chapters, all the different chapter tactics, they intermingle and they train together, and they function like a unit with all of those cool things brought in and all the strengths of the chapters and none of the weaknesses. Pretty much, it's pretty cool stuff. Talks about the heraldry. You know what that is? That's we kind of skipped over this, but that's the whole heraldry of a Deathwatch member. You're going to have the silver left arm, pauldrons and all that stuff. You're going to have your chapter on your right pauldron, and then everything else blacked out. Maybe the Imperial Eagle. It depends. Some of the fluff actually has that painted black too. Some of it done. It's just kind of artist discretion there, but it's cool stuff, man. They are partners with the Inquisition. They are not. I wouldn't say they're direct reports to them, but they do have the Inquisition symbol. So that's where a lot of people get that kind of mixed up. So. But they work very closely. Like they get the call from the Inquisitor, hey, there's this giant Xenos threat, there's this Hive Fleet coming, I need help of the Deathwatch, and that's when the Deathwatch shows up. It's not like, I order you to help, it's like, hey, we need help. There's a big difference there. You can fight Carnifexes, which is, I want to mention that. That was
pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome fight. Talks about Orcs, Eldar war hosts, Tau expansions. These are all the threats that the Deathwatch deals with on a daily basis. Tyranid Hive fleets, they're all Xenos threats. That's who these guys train to fight. And again, it's not giant campaigns. I want to stress that again. These are not chapter fleets showing up. These are surgical strike, 5-10-man teams showing up and going.
And it's generally not chaos, which is the interesting thing.
Yeah.
And Dark Heresy is much more focused on chaos and that kind of thing. So this is really one of the few Warhammer games you're going to get to play that's not really focused on chaos.
No, you can.
You can.
You
sure.
can fight chaos. They don't. It's not that the Deathwatch doesn't fight chaos.
Right.
It's just that's not the main focus.
That's not the main focus.
So.
I like also that they've got the enslavers in there too.
Boom. Yeah, that's something we've been looking at. Like that'd be a cool extra race. Hint, hint. GW. Necrons, the Rise of the Ancients, mentioned that too. They do talk a little bit. This little section talks about the Inquisitors. The Radicals versus the Puritan Inquisitors, that's a holdover from Dark Heresy.
Yeah.
The different types. And I'm not going to get into that, but again, Deathwatch, they're partners, they're not part of it. They're separate from all that politics stuff. Black Shields. So this is what I was talking about, a warrior with no chapter. So that's where this Black Shield, I know the Horus Heresies having their own Black Shields. It's supposed to come out soon with new books. But the Deathwatch also have their version of Black Shields, which is basically just Marines with no chapter.
Right.
So
they either given it up for some reason, or sometimes their chapters get destroyed.
Which can happen.
Yeah.
You were on your Deathwatch and your chapter got wiped out.
Yeah.
And so you no longer have a home to go back to. So, but it's really cool stuff. So the Black Shields are a cool faction. Catechism of the Xenos. So. Yeah, the Jericho Reach, that's just the campaign. I'm not going to get into this too much. This is kind of the cool map for it, though.
Right.
If you're a game master, this section's all for you, man. You can run that. You can steal ideas from here, from Jericho Reach for your games.
It's just great background in general, too, yeah.
Talking about the adversaries of the Deathwatch, different tiers of enemies. Like, you're not going to have hordes of Tyranid warriors, but you're going to have a Tyranid warrior or two running around. You're going to have hordes of Gaunts, though. And this is what I was talking about, when you can have those really epic fights, just to get into the gameplay real quick.
Right.
Where you have those giant epic fights where you're fighting, hundreds of orc boys versus your 5 Deathwatch. And you're like, how do you even have rules for that? They have that covered. Again, they do mention chaos, Marine on Marine action. The Deathwatch don't shy away from that.
Of course.
So they're there for that, too. They're one of the few people, too, that can fight against a demon, or a demon prince in this case, and not immediately crap their pants and die. You can back me up on that.
Absolutely,
with the Imperial Guard guys.
Yeah. If you get even the smallest demon, it's bad news.
Yeah, if your guys see a demon, it's like fear checks every round, like, a psychology test, like can you handle it? You get those insane points, like it's bad news. Marines are like, yeah, whatever.
They're going to fight the demon prince. They're going to fight the elite chaos marine.
Yep, that's what they do. Renegade troops, that's always cool. Tau. So these are just the different style, kind of a focus on NIDS too, and then I think there was some orc stuff at the back if I remember correctly. But there's NPCs, and then extraction. This is another mission. The big thing is they literally do have missions where they drop pod into the drop zone, which sometimes is an orc kill cruiser. It could be on a planet, but then it's like, how do they get out? And they do have extraction strategies and stuff like that. You have to have all that stuff. It's kind of fun if you want to kind of play a military briefing scenario. You can totally do that with this.
Yeah.
You write that briefing out. You have like, you're gonna hit here and exit A, and you're gonna get out at Z, and you have to destroy targets, B through Y on the way.
Yeah.
So.
This is all your special forces missions.
Absolutely.
Expendables or something like
that. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, Deathwatch, it's called Deathwatch for a reason. These guys may not make it back.
Right.
A lot of people would consider it suicide missions, but they're awesome enough and they're tough enough to not always get wiped out. So, pretty cool stuff. Love the Deathwatch, love the setting. I'm excited to see if they're, the rumors are true and there's going to be a Deathwatch Codex come out, because I'll be all over that one, man.
So let me ask you, just finishing up here, if you played 40k RPs already, why should you look at Deathwatch?
If you've played them already?
If you've already played Dark Heresy, what sets, if you like it, what sets Deathwatch apart?
I will say this, if you like Dark Heresy, if you like playing the henchman, if you like being a dude in the Grimdark, that's what those games are for.
Right.
If you've ever wanted to play as an ultimate badass Marine, that's what this game is for. Straight up.
Straight up. And if I played Dark Heresy and didn't like it, should I give this a try still, do you think?
Absolutely. If you didn't like Dark Heresy, for whatever reason, maybe you didn't like being a regular dude, maybe you felt you were limited, maybe you're a power gamer and you just wanted to have that awesomeness. Right. I don't know. You should definitely give Deathwatch a try, because it is a different vibe than than Rogue Trader. It's a different vibe from Dark Heresy. It's just a completely different vibe because you are a Deathwatch Marine.
Well, cool.
So yeah, check it out. If you've had experience, like you said, play it. Just flip through the book, play it. If you haven't and you had a bad experience, give this one a shot.
Try it away.
Totally worth it.
And they're all somewhat compatible. You can work
Absolutely.
this into your only war or your Dark Heresy campaign. So
your Rogue Trader stuff.
Your Rogue Trader stuff. So even if you're already playing a campaign of this is still really good information to have and be able to work in.
Absolutely. So let's hop out for a really quick recap.
All right.
So that was the Deathwatch core rule book. Again, we focused pretty much on the Deathwatch portions, the specific stuff here.
Yeah.
So yeah, any other final thoughts, man?
Worth your time. You know?
That's a good, yeah.
That's what I got. You
Yeah,
know, it's a different experience. It's a beautiful book. Whether you want to use it for role playing or for fluff.
Yeah.
Whether you even want to use the role playing rules in this or want to use your own role playing rules within the setting.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is a great book.
I was gonna say you don't have to play Dark Heresy specific stuff, but there's enough background and there's enough information in here. The world's wide open. I mean, if you're an RPG player, you're probably already customizing your scenarios or borrowing rules or mechanics from other games or whatever. This book, has all of those things that you need to do whatever you want to do. And it's really heavily focused, obviously, on the Deathwatch, which are such a fun hack and slash style of gameplay and setting that, I mean, you're Marines and you're not just Marines, you're the best Marines. So go check it out. It's been out for a long time. I hope you enjoyed this quick BoLS overview. Wasn't that quick, actually. Hope you enjoyed this BoLS overview of the Deathwatch book. I'm pretty pumped about just Deathwatch in general. So thanks for watching. I'm AdamHarry from BoLS.
And I'm Stable Abe.
Thanks again for watching. Have a good one.